So I want to welcome everybody to this webinar. I'm Courtney Wilcox. I'm the moderator of Presbyterians for Earth Care, ably assisted by Mindy Heidenfelder. Like things would not go on without Mindy, so we're so happy she's here. I'm going to open us with a poem, and I love this. And I have read this before at a steering committee, so if you've heard this before, I apologize, but it is beautiful. It is a poem that's written by a gentleman whose name is Steve Garnis Holmes. He is a retired Methodist pastor. He writes poetry based on the lectionary. And this one is entitled Native. And it's taken from John 14:23, which says, "Those who love me will keep my word, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them." And then Steve says, "When I've hauled away the leftovers of our making and buying and throwing, pulled and carted off all the invasive plants that seemed easy and harmless, cleared a space open and blank, and fed the soil with the riches of its own forest floor, and planted blueberries and milkweed and other native species. Then I wait. Soon cardinals and monarchs come, bluebirds and tanagers throng to my garden, because they are native and they know they belong among plants like these. When I clear my mind of my greed, haul off all the shoulds and ought tos, and just wait. Pretty soon I notice the beloved making nests in me, the whole divine family of God moving in because they belong there. They have for thousands of years. It turns out in the heart of my soul, God is a native species.
Love it.
So that's one of my favorites. And I think about us going into Advent and then to Christmas and to this baby being born. And are we providing an environment to welcome that baby, just like native species provide environments to welcome birds and other living creatures? Um, I'll go ahead and introduce Emma. Mindy, does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All righty. So, Emma, are you ready for this, Emma? Um, I want to introduce to you Emma Marshall, our PEC young adult organizer. The work she is doing began as the brainchild of Fred Milligan, moderator of the PEC Advocacy Committee. Fred envisioned a space where young adults could gather, build community, and chart a faithful path forward on environmental concerns. A recent graduate of Princeton Seminary with a Master of Divinity, is now completing her Master of Social Work at Rutgers University. She grew up in Washington, D.C., currently lives in New Jersey with her dog Daphne, and is a candidate for ordination in the National Capital Presbytery. And so, as I look around this group, environmental justice is central to our mission, those of us here for this webinar. And yet it's even more urgent for young adults as they imagine their futures on this planet. Emma has brought together an interested and interesting group of 18 to 35-year-olds under the umbrella of Canopy, the Creation Action Network of Presbyterian Young Adults. And tonight you'll hear about the journey that shaped Emma's leadership and Canopy's formation. You'll hear about environmental justice issues closest to this group's heart and a theological commitment that inspires their activism. Emma, take it away.
Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be here with y'all. Thank you so much for that intro, Courtney. I'm gonna pop my slides up here, if you'll bear with me just a second, and then we will dive on into Canopy here. Get our All right, is everyone seeing that full screen? Looks good? Okay, great. Awesome. So I figured I would start with Canopy's mission, and then we'll back up a little bit and kind of talk about how we got here to this language, who Canopy is, and then we'll start kind of thinking environmentally through this Canopy perspective. But I wanted to start us with how this group has agreed to define itself. So you can see over there on the left our little logo. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but if you just call it Canopy, then it's not. And if you just pretend it doesn't end in the word adults, then it does in fact spell Canopy, the Creation Action Network of Presbyterian Young Adults. So we wanted to be clear about that this is a group that's invested, that sees itself as a part of creation, that we are part of God's creation, and that we're oriented towards action and connection. And so that's where you get action and network. So our mission statement, I will read it because I know it's kind of a block of text. We are a community of faith-filled justice seekers, inspired by the Holy Spirit and informed by the Presbyterian tradition. We come together to advocate and act for environmental justice and creation care, magnifying our voices and power as a new generation of leaders. Heeding the call to love God and to love our neighbors, human and non-human, we seek to connect through diversity, geography, and experience to build collective power, educate and learn through experience and knowledge sharing to inspire action, and take action with energy, intelligence, imagination, and love in solidarity with creation. So there are probably some familiar phrases in there. Faith-filled justice seekers, energy, intelligence, imagination, and love. We wanted to hearken to some of these legacies that we are building on and inheriting. And we also wanted to focus on action and on verbs. There used to be an ad campaign on Nickelodeon when I was a kid that was called Verb. It's what you do, and it was to try to like get you to go for a walk or whatever. But we use that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Some of our focus groups about what are those verbs? What are we doing? And we came up with connect, educate and learn, and take action. So those are our sort of three pillars as we think about what Canopy is. So that's who we are. More on a more granular level, I would say. I'll give you a little bit about our demographics. So as of today, we are 42, 43 if you count me, young adults formally connected to the network. So we have 42 people who have opted in and say, yes, I want to be a part of Canopy. It is relatively evenly split. We have 16 ministry professionals, which I would include, that includes clergy, working chaplains, and denominational staff, so people working in the various PCUSA offices. And we have 13 people who consider themselves students, whether that's we have some college students, some graduate students in a variety of fields, and then some seminarians as well. And then we have 13 like young professionals otherwise defined. So those are maybe people who are not working in church settings or active ministry, but are out of school and kind of getting their careers off the ground. These folks are all ages 18 to 35, as Courtney said, and they are all affiliated with Presbyterianism in some way, though, as I say, we're not carding, but they are Presbyterian generally. This group also spans the coast. So I'm not, that list of states is not comprehensive, but we have folks all the way across the continental United States. We have not quite hopped to Hawaii or Alaska. So if you or someone you know,
I'll work on it. I'll
thank
work on
you.
it for you.
Yes. We are looking, we're in the market. So yeah, we cover all the time zones of the continental US at the moment, and we're looking to hop some borders here. But it's a national network of folks in all kinds of different works and ministries and vocations. So that's our demographics. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we got here. So I formally came aboard in this role back in June. And in the summer, it was a lot of kind of figuring out what it would look like to build a meaningful space for young adults interested in faith-based environmental organizing. And so a lot of that was just one-on-one conversations with people. I talked to a lot of community partners doing similar work, serving similar populations, a lot of people within this population, denominational leaders, experts, and just had a lot of really fruitful conversations where themes were starting to emerge about what people are hungry for, what people are interested in, and what might draw them to a group like this when there are so many different places you can go to do activism work, both within and outside of faith-based spaces. And then in August, we pivoted, we kind of got down to brass tacks and we had some focus groups. So I think total we had 15 people join these focus groups. The breakdown is there. We had mostly women, three men, two non-binary folks. Again, a pretty even split between ministry professionals and students, and a wide range of states represented. And in that process, that's where we got our mission statement and our name and our branding package, and sort of our initial framework for how this group was going to come together. We were asking folks, what are the theological themes that draw you to a place like this? What are the things your community, your local community is hungering for? What are you hungering for as a leader in this space? And what excites you? What are your dreams? What are the things you're hoping for when you think about creation, care, and environmental justice? And we'll talk a little bit more about what came out of that as we go on here. So once we had some of those sort of answers to those questions, what is this group going to be all about? We kind of put it together in a package, and we kicked off in September with our first virtual meeting. We're on a sort of monthly meeting schedule at the moment. The first one was mostly get to know yous, forming some of that community that people really told us they were hungry for, having those get to know yous and that doing some brainstorming about what we intended to be and do. Um, in October, I went to the PC conference and met some of you wonderful folks there. And we had our second virtual meeting, which was a sort of crash course in the PCUSA as it relates to environmental justice. A lot of what we heard from young folks is that either they are very involved at the denominational level, they were YADs, or they work in a denominational office, or they were a YAV. They know the PCUSA world, but they're not seeing it in their local congregation, or the other way around. Their local congregation is super active on environmental justice, but they don't know what resources are available denominationally. So our second meeting was designed to kind of get us all on the same page. And then we had our third meeting last month, which was an action-oriented power hour. So we took an hour and we focused on three tangible actions that we could take in the meeting, to kind of get some energy, and to move the needle on some things. So we reviewed some of GA overtures coming out of Presbyterians for Earth Care and gave some feedback and reflected on those. We participated in the global ethical stock take for COP30. We discussed a few of those questions together and submitted our responses to COP30 in advance of that conference. And then we discussed and considered how we might participate in a boycott of Chevron that is being conducted by Christians for a Free Palestine, actually next week. If you're interested, I encourage you to check out their website. So that's sort of how we got to today, right now, where we are. And so I want to kind of, with that history of sort of what's been going on over the past few months, I want to kind of drill down on what is coming out of these conversations I'm having with our stakeholders as meaningful. Why are they interested in this issue? Why do they want to come together in a faith-based setting and work on environmental justice? It is not going to surprise anyone to learn that these folks see a lot of issues that they could be working on. There are a lot of different justice issues, a lot of different of their faith values that are being sort of violated in the present moment. And this is the one they've chosen to put their energy towards. And so I want to kind of think a little bit about why that is. Some of this will not be news to anyone, but I think it's good to kind of just lay the groundwork of why this is so meaningful for this group of people. So, as Courtney kind of mentioned, the effects of the climate crisis weigh really heavy on this generation, on my generation, and the generations coming behind us as well. So the consequences of the climate crisis will most be felt by today's young adults, teens, and children. There's a lot of data out there on how that's already the case, and will continue to be the case, economically, health-wise, geographically. All of these issues are just going to compound for this generation. And then there's also the issue of climate anxiety, that knowing that that disaster is coming, or has already come in many respects, is causing a lot of concern as this generation of like 18 to 35-year-olds. So we're thinking like mid to younger millennials, older Gen Z, as they're kind of getting their lives established. This is from the UN that 74 to 96% of young people express serious and disruptive concern or worry over the climate crisis. And 38% of Gen Z reports delaying having children or choosing not to have children due to environmental anxiety. So these anxieties are affecting the course of people's lives. This generation's, a lot of folks, the course of their lives will look different than their parents' generation because of the climate crisis. So that's a lot of what we're hearing, that this sort of existential anxiety is coming home for people who are interested in this coming joining together in this work. Um, this will also not surprise anyone, but another big factor is the intersectionality of environmental justice and climate advocacy. Um, there's a whole tapestry of social justice issues facing us right now, and environmental justice intersects with just about everything. So, again, probably not news, but people of color are more likely to die of environmental causes than white people, and more than half of those who live dangerously close to hazardous waste are people of color. The climate crisis disproportionately impacts poor people, even though richer countries generate more of the pollution and waste contributing to the crisis. There's a huge gender component to the climate crisis. 16 million more women and girls may be pushed into poverty by 2050 than men and boys, and 47.8 million more women face food insecurity and hunger than men. So there's a gender component. I have this quote, it's a tweet, I must admit, it's a tweet, but from Ursula Wolf-Roca that says, it can be overwhelming to take in all of the injustices of the moment. The good news is that they're all connected. So if your little corner of work involves pulling at one of the threads, you're helping to unravel the whole cloth. So, with that quote in mind, I'm curious for this group that's here tonight, what are some of those intersectional issues? What are some of the justice issues that cross-cut with environmental justice that are animating for you? And that can be, you can just unmute yourself and chime in, you can drop it in the chat. But as you think about other justice issues that intersect with environmental justice, what are some of those issues that you're thinking about? Let's see if I can open my chat here so I can see it. Um, yeah, what else comes up for folks? Yeah, water access, huge, right? Yeah, clean water, consistent water access, especially as like a health concern. Immigration and migration, absolutely. Yeah, that people are being forced to leave their homes because they're no longer safe due to environmental degradation. Absolutely. Yep, food insecurity, especially with SNAP benefits being cut. We're very aware of that right now and here at home, and it's a huge issue abroad environmentally as well. Yeah, housing cost. Housing cost has been a big one for this group. So as we think about how the housing or how the climate crisis unequally impacts young people, not being able to afford housing, huge. Microplastics and health, absolutely. Increasingly noticing the effects of the materials we're exposing ourselves to. Yeah. Wow, these are awesome. Well, they're not awesome. You know what I mean? Yeah, colonialism, extractive capitalism, absolutely. This idea of land rights. Um, yeah, this environmental racism of mostly Black communities being unequally exposed to natural gas, to other pollutants. Yeah. So a lot of these have come up in our conversations with young folks. These are similar to a lot of the things that our stakeholders are considering. Two in particular have emerged as sort of major themes for our group. So I'm going to kind of just share a little bit about those. Um, so the
The
first,
EPA is starting to allow the use of pesticides
oops, sorry, the the
containing PFAS on food. It's part of an effort.
you good? Cool. Awesome. So, the first one that has come up a lot with this group of folks is global conflict. So, in particular, I think especially in light of the past couple of years of campus protests, a lot of our young folks were really formed in that milieu of activism of campus protests. Global conflict is a huge driver of the climate crisis and vice versa. The climate crisis is a huge driver of violence. As someone in the chat mentioned, colonialism and also migration, that this resource scarcity creates conflict and natural disaster creates conflict, and then vice versa, that violence, weapons, land degradation, all of these things impact the global climate. So I have this quote from the UN Environment Program Executive Director about the artificial famine in Gaza. So his name's Inger Anderson. Not only are the people of Gaza dealing with untold suffering from the ongoing war, the significant and growing environmental damage in Gaza risks locking its people into a painful, long recovery. People are already living with the consequences of conflict-related damage to environmental management systems and pollution today. Water and sanitation have collapsed. Critical infrastructure continues to be decimated. Coastal areas, soil, and ecosystems have been severely impacted. All of this is deeply harming people's health, food security, and Gaza's resilience. So even in that quote, we hear food security, we hear health, and we hear water, we hear sanitation. A lot of those things we were lifting up on the last slide are present in this global conflict. And so that is a major activating issue for our stakeholders. This comes up a lot in our conversations and has continued to come up as a primary area of focus. And another theme that has come up a lot, I think perhaps with thanks to Robin Wall Kimmerer and her beautiful Braiding Sweetgrass, a lot of young folks are really activated about Native and Indigenous rights and land back initiatives. This is another thing that has come up a lot. Many of you may be aware that there was a major land back initiative in Los Angeles and the Presbytery of San Gabriel earlier this year. The Presbytery returned a community center and a pretty significant parcel of land to the tribal council in that area. Chief Morales, who's the leader of that tribal council at the moment, said this is more than a gift. It's a recognition of truth, history, and healing. To receive land back on our ancestral village near the very mission that symbolizes our people's colonization is a powerful act of justice. So in this real meaningful way, the Presbytery of St. Gabriel is redoing the geography of their presbytery to create more justice in the land. So that's another, I think a lot of folks were really inspired by that. It has continued to come up in our conversations as well. So this is the part where I ask everyone to do a little activity with me, if you'll go with me on this journey. So I'm going to share with you all an activity that we did as part of our focus groups with our young adults, with our stakeholders, that I think people found really interesting and provoked some really interesting discussion. So what I'll do is I'll present sort of what the activity is, and then I'll ask for some brave folks who want to share their responses to the activity. And then I'll tell you sort of how our young adults typically sort of fall on this activity. So I'm not good at geometry. I never was, but I'm going to do my best here. We have a little bit like a grid here, a little graph. So our y-axis, and I will say this is based on themes that emerge from our conversation. This is not like a highly researched theological tool. I'm sure there are biblical scholars that would parse this differently, but this is how we parsed it in our group. So our vertical axis has two different orientations to sort of anthropology. What does it mean to be a human? So at the top, we have this idea that humans are stewards of creation. Humans are separate from creation, or have a special role in creation, and creation is something other. And then at the bottom, we have humans as creation, that there is this fabric of creation. Humans are one piece of that or one thread in that fabric, but there's really no meaningful distinction between humans and the rest of creation. And then our x-axis, the naming is we could discuss the naming, but on the left-hand side, we have creation pessimism. So this is the sense that the relationship between humanity and creation is adversarial, that it's fraught, that there's conflict in that relationship. And then on the other side, we have creation optimism, which holds that the relationship between humanity and creation is generative and renewing and sustaining. In sort of a more positive frame. I'm wondering, I will not necessarily read all of these. Maybe I'll just read a little bit, but we have a little Bible passage for each one of these sort of overlapping themes to kind of illustrate. So for humans as stewards and creation optimism, we have Psalm 8, which says that God has made humans a little lower than God. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet. So here we see humans as different from creation, and they have this sort of positive state, like status in the system, and there's a positive relationship there. And then for Psalm 27, we have creation optimism, where humans are part of creation. It says, may the mountains yield prosperity for the people and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the needy, and crush the oppressor. So in this, we have justice in the land means justice for the people, that justice in creation and justice for humanity is one and the same, and that relationship is justice promoting. And then we get to Isaiah 24, as it's kind of the punk rock section of this little chart here. So we have creation pessimism, that there's conflict between humans and creation, but that humans are still a part of that creation. So the Lord is about to lay waste the earth and make it desolate. The earth dries up and withers. The earth lies polluted under its inhabitants, for they have transgressed the laws, violated the statutes, broken the everlasting covenant. So here we have injustice in humanity causing injustice in the land. So there's this sense in which the humans can do damage to creation just with their actions to one another. So humans and creation aren't separate, but that's not necessarily a good thing. And then I'm sure everyone is very familiar with Genesis 3, this humans as stewards and this sort of adversarial or pessimistic model. Cursed is the ground because of you, in toil you shall eat of it. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. So does that any questions about this like grid? Any initial thoughts, comments, questions? It will not surprise you to learn that I'm going to ask you to graph yourself today in just a minute. But before I ask you to do that, any thoughts about the grid or anything not clear? Yeah, Bruce.
I like it very much. I think, though, it might be good to knock one of them off and have a New Testament reference. Um, for example, John 3:16 can blow people away if they understand it is a comprehensive kind of love for cosmos and whatnot. But just to do a little balance between the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian ones, it might be good to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I this sort of breakdown certainly represents um, the some of the like multiplicity of perspectives on creation in scripture, but it does not capture all of them for sure. And of course, it leaves out a huge piece that it doesn't have a gospel in here or a New
Well,
Testament.
the other one, Catherine Hayhoe, who's an excellent climate scientist, says part of her motivation is love of neighbor and how the climate crisis impacts neighbors in huge ways. And that might be another
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
top
Yeah, I
of my.
appreciate that. Yeah. Other initial thoughts, reactions to our little graph here?
I'd say love of future generations
Mm,
of all
yeah.
species.
hmm So the sense of legacy or this eye towards the future sustainability as another motivation. Yeah, I love that. Awesome.
Yeah, and one thing you might think about is different authors or theologians putting their names up there if they represent one of those quadrants. I think that sounds fun too. This is
Mhm.
fabulous. I love it.
Good. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I definitely think there's some if you I'm sure there are I know there are because I'm at Princeton Seminary where we famously have a farm people who are like thinking really hard about like what are these perspectives coming together and how can we sort of embody multiple perspectives at the same time too.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, I'm
Yeah,
gonna ask, oh sorry, was I go ahead.
I this is Ella Joan in New Mexico. I was on a call today, climate restoration with Peter Fikowski and a whole movement, and its motivation is for our children and grandchildren. So when you were mentioning it's for the future, there are other groups out there that have that same thought that we're here for the future, not right now, but to create a world in 20 years, 10 years, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I love that. Thank you. So with
So
that in mind, with our, oh, sorry, Courtney, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say one thing. I think it would be really cool to find ways to preach on each of these as a creation care sermon. I think that would be really cool.
That would
I
be,
mean, that
yeah,
would be a challenge that people could take up and then share those sermons.
yeah. And to Bruce's point, maybe you could, pair a New Testament text with them too and kind of like build out a series on that. That could be really interesting. Very cool. So I'm gonna ask folks, let's say you can either, I don't think I have drawing activated. Yeah, that's too complicated. So let's say this. If you let's call Psalm 8. Actually, let's just use the numbers. So if you identify with this Psalm 8 quadrant, you can just drop an 8 in the chat. And again, oh, I should say, I asked our young adults to do this. And I want to be clear, you are not committing to anything for the rest of your life. I am asking you where you feel you are today. So just right now in this moment, the Bible embodies all of these perspectives. We embody all of these perspectives at different times. So when you think about today, if you had to pick one, where would you find yourself? So if you feel that you are in the Psalm 8 quadrant, you can drop an 8 in the chat. If you're in 72, Psalm 72, you can drop a 72. If you feel very punk rock today, you can drop a 24 for Isaiah and then 3 for Genesis 3. And I'm going to kind of keep an eye and see how we're shaking out. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Psalm 72s today, which I love. Okay, interesting. So we're gonna compare the data here in a minute. So you can kind of keep an eye on your chat and see sort of how things are shaking out. So I think we've seen them all. Oh, interesting. So no one so far has identified with Genesis 3. We have a lot of folks with Psalm 72 and a few folks with Isaiah 24 and Psalm 8. So that's very interesting. Let's hold that in our minds. You can keep dropping your responses there. Does anyone want to, if anyone feels called, you're welcome to share why you selected your quadrant. I think we have a couple of minutes if anyone wants to share what they picked and why.
Yeah, this is Barb up in Alaska. I mentioned in the chat that extractive stuff is going to start happening at a really ex accelerated pace up here, and I'm really worried that Alaska is going to become another West Virginia or something like that. So I'm falling on that one because I really feel like it truly is the last frontier up here, and if something isn't done, it's just going to turn into a mess.
Mm.
And I granted it is a very vast land, it's huge, but there's all kinds of proposals to tear up, make new roads and to tear down forests and all that stuff. So that's why I'm thinking about I'm more of a pessimist right now because of what's going on in our nation's capital.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Isaiah 24, that passage is really evocative of a lot of what we've seen when it comes to extractive mining and fracking and, sort of the way that in unjust action leads to wasted earth in that way. Yeah. Who else? Anyone else want to kind of chime in where they fell? You can also put it in the chat if that's easier. I'm just looking. It looks like we have a lot of folks for 72. I'm interested. Yeah, Bruce, go ahead.
I really like what you've done here, and I'm wondering, could you give us a brief write-up on this, and then we could post it in our churches and personal Facebooks and give you credit and have your email address there as a way of both resourcing the churches and also publicizing your work.
Absolutely. I'm all about recruitment. So absolutely, I would love to do that. And yeah, if this seems like it would be a fun activity for y'all to do in your communities, I'd be happy to equip you with the source itself and a little bit of a description too. Absolutely.
Does anybody else find that helpful? Maybe it just
Definitely.
Amen. And ditto.
Yeah, absolutely. A great, exciting way to do this. And yeah, as far as 72, I think perhaps we might see hope in that. That in that creation optimism and humans as creation, the hope. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. I'm glad this is resonating. We've had a lot of fun with our young adults doing this, and heard a lot of really, really interesting theological voices coming out of that. So I'm going to show you the answers now. Just kidding. I'm going to show you how our young adults voted. So this is not the complete data, but it gives you a sense of the distribution. So obviously we had some folks didn't like the choosing, and I respect that. So we had two folks who said, I'm right in the middle of this. I can't pick. I like a dead center on this. I can't pick. We had one person who really felt that humans were like part of creation in that meaningful sense, but couldn't really decide if that was a positive or a negative, what kind of relationship that was. And then I think the most interesting thing about this graph is we only had one person select Psalm 8. Only one person felt that there was something positive or generative in a model of stewardship, where humans have a sort of special role in creation. So I wasn't keeping as much of a running tally as I probably should have been, but I think 8 was maybe our second highest in this group after 72. Um, and we didn't have very many Genesis 3 folks in this group. With our focus groups, we had a decent amount of Genesis 3 people who felt like this is representative of the relationship between humans and creation as they see it. This adversarial, kind of pulled apart, separated out relationship. So I think this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, I just think it's useful to see how young people of faith feel about their role in creation. And there's a lot of pessimism there. There's a lot of feeling that that humans kind of can't do anything right when it comes to creation care. And there's also a real draw, like overall, most of our on average, people are more drawn to this idea that humans really need to be seeing themselves as a part of the fabric of creation, and this idea of having a special role is maybe sort of some hubris that draws us into some of these problems. So those are the main themes I would say that kind of emerged from this little exercise. So with that, I'm gonna give us a quick overview of sort of the major themes we heard from our various one-on-one conversations and focus groups. So we talked about the major issues that are coming to the fore as it comes to global conflict and Native issues, or Native rights, and we've talked a little bit about some of those theological themes. These are some of the practical themes. So I kind of sorted these into 3 buckets: what people want to learn, what they want to tackle, and how they want to feel. And I was surprised by that feelings when I didn't expect so many people to have such an affective or emotional reaction to the idea of a group like this, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So some of this may resonate. This group wants to learn best practices and how-tos. They are seeing other churches do cool work, and they think that maybe their church could do it, and they'd like to know how to do it. So that's these tangible actions, some education, some learning. We had 2 major themes that are related. Some folks are in passive congregations that do not really do much about social justice in general or environmental justice in particular, and people are wondering about how to create some energy there. And then on the other side, we have folks who are leading in like Earth Care congregation, Matthew 25 congregation. They've got all the boxes checked, and how do they channel that energy? How do they make that? How do they focus that on something that will move the needle? And then a big theme we heard was that people feel like they need help connecting the worship that goes on in their churches into action. So people have a real reverence for God's creation, in the worship space, but how does that translate into how they live their lives? In terms of what people want to tackle from sort of an issue-based perspective, a big thing that came up was hopelessness and helplessness. People articulating their own sense of hopelessness, and people who articulated, my peers have given up on this. Like, I see people who are they just have given up. And how do we maintain that energy? Another big thing that came up was promoting an environmental justice framework. So I am careful how I talk about this because I think both of these frameworks are extremely valuable and both are extremely necessary. But a lot of what we heard is that folks have heard a lot about what I would call like a sustainability or a conservation framework, that we should recycle, we should drive electric cars, we should, do all the things that we know we should be doing. And everyone agrees we absolutely should be doing those things. And I think a lot of folks are hungry for some language to talk about this that connects environmental justice to other social issues, and that conceives of environmental justice as a broader, like I'm going to say sea change, which is a little ironic given the topic, but a broader change of heart, a repentance, a metanoia, shall we say, this broader conversation around what justice looks like, rather than just what we can do as individuals to make a difference for conservation. And so kind of having a both and there was a big theme. Denominational divestment continues to come up for this group, especially for folks who were young adult advisory delegates at previous GAs. And then policy and advocacy change within local government, within the denomination. I think people are maybe a little burnt out or discouraged on a national level at the moment, but a lot of people are seeing changes that could be made in their community, and are looking for support to increase their efficacy in their congregations to help move the needle there too. And then in terms of these feelings, how do we want to feel? A huge, huge thing was that young people feel isolated in their congregations. They may be the only person in their demographic in their congregation. They may have a community of young people in their congregation, but that community doesn't maybe feel taken seriously or seen in the way, this probably will not surprise people. The young people just feel a little disconnected, even those who are in faith communities, they feel disconnected in those faith communities because the leadership doesn't necessarily reflect them, and the bulk of the population doesn't necessarily reflect them. So a lot of folks were just really hungry for a faith community that could talk about these issues and talk about faith and form friendships and form some community there. So that feeds into these other themes of people wanting to feel more confident as church leaders and taken seriously as leaders. And I will say this is a big part of my why for this project. I really believe that young people have a stake in the future of the church and that, I want to encourage young people to claim that stake and increase their efficacy as leaders in the church too. So that has also been a big theme. So I will just flash forward here. We have a continued plan of monthly meetings. We're working on developing our issue agenda, and we're working on developing some ecumenical partnerships. We have some peer groups in the ELCA, the Catholic Climate Covenant, in the Evangelical Environmental Network. So thinking about what it might look like to take some collective action. And then we're looking forward to maybe, hopefully in the future, some kind of in-person gathering, maybe at GA 227, maybe a retreat. I've been talking to some camps and conference centers, so we'll see. But I want to give y'all a couple things you can do to support our work, and then we'll do some questions and stuff. If you are interested in keeping up with Canopy, the best way to do that is to follow us on Instagram. I deleted Instagram off my phone because I'm very brave, but we're still there. You can still find us there. So if you go to Instagram and type in canopy_PEC, you'll find us. You can follow us there. If you are 18 to 35, or you know someone who is, or you're not, but you want to receive newsletters from Canopy, you can fill out our interest form, which is linked there. It's also linked on our Instagram page. It's bit.ly/Canopy interest form, or you can always email me, pecyaorganizer@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you are inspired by what you heard here tonight and you want to support young people leading in this space, you can always donate to support Canopy's continued work. As we're thinking about what an in-person gathering might look like, as we're thinking about sponsoring young adults who want to be young adult advisory delegates at GA and advocate for some of these policy issues, as we're thinking about people who want to go to conferences and lift up this work and do this advocacy, maybe go to DC and do advocacy. Those things cost money. And the major way that you can support young people in the church is give them the resources they need to do this work. As we all know, there's an economic inequality generationally where young people just haven't had the time to build the resources to do this kind of volunteer advocacy work. So you can donate to Canopy as we think about what it might look like to fund this advocacy work. That QR code takes you there, or that link at the bottom, bit.ly/support Canopy. We are very grateful for any and all support, whether that's following us on Instagram or making a donation. And with all of that, we have a couple minutes for questions, Mindy. I know I was a little long, I'm sorry.
We can do questions for a few minutes.
Yeah, there's time for questions. Does anybody have anything? So I have to say, I am so thrilled with Emma's enthusiasm and the result of the effort that she's put in over the last 6 months. She is just absolutely outstanding. So we're really grateful for everything that she does. Really, really, I have to say. So now you can ask her questions.
Yeah, I do.
Very kind of Courtney.
Yeah, a question.
Yeah, I'm going to stop my share so I can see folks if that's all right. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Diane, and I was a previous moderator of Presbyterians for Earth Care, and so my question comes somewhat from that, as well as from someone that both Jerry Reese and I know. So there was always a struggle, there was a consistent struggle between activism and advocacy for PEC leadership? How far do we go? You know, do we sit up there with Julia in the tree, or is it enough to stand under the tree with our signs? And Jerry and I know this amazing woman who is worldwide known. She's an investigative journalist, and she came to speak for us a couple times here in the Kansas City area. And I wrote her up as an activist. Oh my gosh. Well, we didn't print that, but she raged against that. I'm not an activist, I'm an advocate. But you know, I see her as an activist because of her amazing writings. How do and you talked about advocate activism, you didn't really speak about advocacy. How does your group range in that, and how do they feel?
Yeah, so this was a major focus of our focus groups, was like, where do people fall on this? And one of the things we did was review in that focus group. I didn't put it in this, I didn't include it in this, but we had people respond to some language from the 2016 collaborative agenda and the 1990, oh, I'm going to forget the title, but the big environmental justice PCUSA document from 1990. And the main thing that people said about the 2016 is that it says Presbyterians should commit to prayer, education. There's one other, I want to say like solidarity and other forms of direct action. And everyone was like, what does that mean? What is that? What is that giving us? What is that giving like an imprimatur for? What is that giving sort of license to do? Like, what does that mean? What is other forms of direct action? And a major theme that I've heard from this group of folks is that people are frustrated with advocacy. People are frustrated with calling their representatives, and they think it's really important, and they are glad that it's happening, and they're happy to keep calling their representatives, and they're looking for like what's next, what's a little bit more. And so that's our last meeting was this sort of more action oriented in the sense of like, here's some things you can do right now today that are not just that will make an impact, that will hit Chevron in their pocketbook, or so I would say this group tends to gravitate towards activism over advocacy, at least in this context. I think they are committed to advocacy, but these are folks who've like volunteered some of their time to come to an extracurricular activity. And so they're looking for something a little bit like something to do on top of their activism. So I don't know if that answers specifically. That's sort of what I'm hearing from our folks, but yeah.
Thank you. Fascinating.
Yeah, Linda, I saw your hand.
Linda Johnson, go ahead. You're on mute. We can't hear you.
There we go.
There you go.
I put a thing in the chat. You know, I have been an activist my whole bloody life, marched in how many things. And since day one, I compost, and I have all electric house and an all electric vehicle, and I make sure I don't use fossil fuels. And I mean, you name it. My babies all wore diapers, and I mean, I made my own baby food. Everything I could think of for 80 some years, I have done. And I have yelled and yelled and yelled, especially since 88, when I heard Jim Hansen demonstrate what's going to happen. In 1988, you may not know this, my dear young child, but in 1988, if we had begun then to control and stop fossil fuels, we would have prevented climate change, not dealt with the consequences thereof, but actually prevented it. We had 12 years to bring the level of heat down, and we could do that. And I've been a nagging, bitchy yeller about this ever since. And it is so hard. I do all my own things, but to get the community to do things, to change the world is so hard. I'm at least as frustrated as your young people, at least because I've been doing it for so many years. But one of the things, for instance, in this military community that I live in, where we have lots and lots of prisons, core civics trying to get in, lots of government buildings, educational facilities, hospitals, I've been trying to get everybody to think about putting solar panels on every roof. All it takes on those big government buildings, just cover them in solar panels. And the property taxes here are out of sight because all of these buildings are not paying any taxes. And so homeowners pay huge taxes here to keep the community going. All it would take is a small thing like solar panels on every roof. I think you have to start thinking about local community efforts.
Mhm.
You have to go one step beyond individual, which is where I've been always. And I'm not saying don't do the individual, but think, and don't even think about state government or national government. Think about local government, kind of a boring group, but try to get them to allow wind farms, to allow solar panel farms, to allow to just think, what do we need? Energy prices are skyrocketing. There ought to be some incentive for that to happen. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for, I mean, first of all, thank you for all your work and your activism. I think this you have probably the right to be more, that frustration, I think is like you've earned it. And I think this group is aligned with a lot of that wisdom that has been so hard earned from efforts in the past. That this we're thinking about what it might look like to form regional teams, to be hyper local while being a national network. That's like a major sort of next step for us is how do we create some regional communities that can do this work locally? Because I think you're right. That's where a lot of the juice to squeeze is, so to speak. And I think a lot of that the sense that individual action is crucial and we're glad to do it and we're glad when other folks are doing it and we need to be thinking systemically is a major theme that's come out too. So thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I saw Jerry's hand. Jerry Reese.
Thought Bruce was ahead of me.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, I wanted to say it's good to hear Linda Johnson sound off after all these years. She's one of my early influencers from Village Presbyterian Church, and I'm glad she decided to join in and speak out. Basically, good to hear from you, Linda. I don't disagree with anything. You talked about 80 years. I guess you're almost as old as I am.
Amazing. I love that. Awesome. Yeah, Bruce.
Thank you. I'm very happy to hear what you're doing. You are a blessing to the organization, to the church, and God's creation. Thank you. Um, I am a diehard Presbyterian, and I would like to see our denomination actually grow in your lifetime. We're hitting 1 million now. When I started, it was like 3 million. I would argue what you're doing. I know it has been my experience in the churches I've served. If we have a strong creation care emphasis, it attracts people. And young families, older grandparents, all kinds of people suddenly start coming to the church because they see the relevancy of the church. So as you're hitting the road on the screen or otherwise, talk about creation care and evangelism because I really do think it's good for the church, it's good for creation. To that end, the most densely populated state for Presbyterians is Pennsylvania. I saw nobody in your list of states from Pennsylvania. So I think I border it, others live in it. We need to really work on that area to get more people involved in your work because we've got several colleges in that area. And so, anyway, blessings on you. Happy to help any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And as a neighbor of Pennsylvania myself, yes, I absolutely. I
Now,
definitely think, sorry.
don't quote me as saying the Presbyterians in Pennsylvania are dense, but just
I would simply never. No, to your point about evangelism, I think some of those themes that we were hearing from our young folks that they don't feel like they have a stake in the congregations that they worship in, and what does it look like to support them in increasing their voice and their impact and the degree to which their congregations see them as meaningful stakeholders, is a major part of the work that I think we're hoping to do, kind of increasing people's efficacy. And I think that goes back to evangelism, that people are likely to stay in congregations where they feel invested and they feel that they are respected as part of the community and that they have a stake. And so hopefully there's sort of a feedback loop there of people joining congregations, finding something meaningful there, staying, and hopefully the cycle turns. But yes, I'm also hoping that it might grow in my lifetime as a candidate for ordination in this denomination. So
Thanks. Thanks,
Yeah.
Emma. I think we're going to wrap up. I do see one last comment from Chuck about needing guidance for passive congregations. And I think that will grow out of what Emma's doing and also out of other webinars, actually, or having somebody come preach that can preach a good environmental justice sermon for you, to sort of kickstart some things. But Emma, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here with us tonight. We are really grateful.
Thank
Really
you all.
grateful.
I'm grateful for y'all's time and support. Thank you.
Yeah. Mindy, do you have some slides to throw up?
I just wanted to mention two other things coming up within the next month. Presbyterians for Earth Care will be having the longest night, exploring the winter solstice and its cultural significance in worship and praise. And we have two PEC members who didn't know each other before, but they're collaborating to do this special worship service for us. And so that will be coming up on December 21st. And then we have our annual meeting that we have started to do every January, kind of a new-ish tradition. And that will be on Sunday, January 11th. Not only will we be talking about PEC, but we will be announcing our Earth Care Award recipients. We will be announcing some new steering committee members based on an election that will be coming up. And we will also have a short program on 3 overtures that Presbyterians for Earth Care has actually drafted. And we're going to have a bit of an educational session on those overtures. So please come to the annual meeting. And Emma's fundraising for Canopy is also on this same page. She just made it look fancier than I know how. But if you would like to make a donation to PEC and Canopy, they're both on the same page, and that's on our giving page on our website. And Courtney, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'm just going to say thank you for being with us. I actually am offering the longest night service, the winter solstice service, which is on the longest night on the 21st, Sunday the 21st, to my congregation as an opportunity because we are not going to do one this year. And so you can also open it up to your congregations if they are interested in a longest night. And for those of you who don't know, longest night is just holding space for people that have challenges during the holidays for any number of reasons, or just want to sit and remember people that they've loved that have left this earth and they're missed at this time. So that's what the longest night service is all about. It's really beautiful. So share that opportunity with your congregations. If if people can't make it to the one that you're hosting, or if you don't have one.
Thank you.
I see a request for the slides. Emma, can you share the slides?
Yeah, I can. I can touch base with Mindy about how best to circulate that.
We'll put them up. We'll put them up on the site. Yeah, that's great. So how about if I send us off in prayer? Creator God, we are wandering on our way to the manger at Bethlehem. We see the starlit sky. We recognize the beauty of your creation. We know that it is good. And we also know that we await the birth of your son, which is a huge gift. We wait for Emmanuel, who is God with us. So for all your gifts to us, we give you thanks for the leadership of Emma and Canopy, for the people gathered on this call that have worked for years and for decades to care for your creation. We give you thanks. God, point us in the right direction. Help us gather people around us to do the good work of taking care of your world. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all.